You ever get the feeling that you dodged something bad, but you don't even fully understand what? Like your brain knows before you do, and all you can do is react? Yeah, that's how I feel every time I think about Cameron. I wasn't even big on Tinder, honestly. But my last relationship had crashed and burned, and my roommate wouldn't shut up about how I needed to get back out there. So, after one too many beers, I finally made an account. First couple of matches were whatever. Bots, weird conversations, girls who never responded. But then I matched with her. Cameron. She wasn't like the others. She was actually normal, witty, easy to talk to, and stupidly attractive. Like, I kept checking her Instagram to see if she was too attractive, if that makes sense. She had this almost unreal beauty, but her profile wasn't overly curated like an influencer's. Just casual pics. Her with friends, a dog, one at a coffee shop, one in front of a neon sign with that perfect smirk. It was effortless. I messaged first. She responded immediately. We clicked. She asked me out before I could ask her. Said she knew a low-key bar not far from my place. I tried not to overthink it, but in the back of my mind I was like, when does this ever happen? Girls like her don't just throw themselves at guys like me. But I ignored that voice, because I was winning. We met up 2 nights later. The second she walked in, I had to remind myself to act normal. She was way hotter in person. Tall, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes. She hugged me like we'd known each other for years. The night went insanely well. She laughed at my dumb jokes, we had easy conversation, and this is the part that should have set off alarms. She was really interested in me. Not in the fake, tell me about yourself way. She was studying me, asking the right questions, finishing my sentences like she knew what I was going to say before I said it. I ignored that voice again. We ended up back at her place. It wasn't what I expected. Not a girly apartment, no fairy lights or plants, just minimal, cold. Her bedroom was mostly empty. Big bed, a mirror, and nothing on the walls. But hey, I wasn't about to complain. The night went how you'd expect. I woke up around 3 a.m., thirsty as hell. I figured I'd find a glass of water, maybe check my phone. That's when I saw him. The roommate. I'd forgotten she even had one. He was standing near the hallway, half hidden in the dark. I could barely see him. Tall, lanky, weirdly stiff. His voice was low, rushed. You need to leave. Right now. I blinked, still half asleep. What? Leave? Now? I thought he was joking, or drunk, or just weird, but he wasn't smiling. His face was pale, almost sweaty, his hands clenched at his sides. I chuckled awkwardly. Dude, I get it. You don't want random guys in your apartment. This isn't about me, he interrupted. His eyes flicked toward Cameron's room. His voice dropped even lower. Just go. And that was the moment. The moment my brain finally caught up. Something was wrong. I turned toward the bedroom. The door was slightly open. I could see the edge of the mirror from where I stood, and there was a shape. Not Cameron, something else. I couldn't see it, not directly. It was like a distortion in the glass, like static, where her reflection should have been. The air felt heavier. My mouth went dry. The roommate grabbed my arm. Don't look at her. I listened. I grabbed my shirt, my phone, and walked out the front door without another word. The second I stepped outside, I felt like I could breathe again. My skin was clammy, my heart racing. I half expected Cameron to call after me or text something snarky. She didn't. She unmatched me by the time I got home. I never saw her again, never heard from her. It was like she just ceased to exist. But sometimes when I'm half asleep, I swear I hear static. And when I look at my reflection in the dark, I think I see something moving. You ever have one of those nights that just feels off, like nothing bad has actually happened yet, but something in your gut is screaming, get out of here? Yeah. I had one of those. And I should have listened. It started as a normal date. I matched with Ryan about a week before. Tall, dark hair, clean cut. Looked like the kind of guy who played college football but still called his mom every Sunday. His bio was simple. Big fan of late-night drives. Let's go on an adventure. Corny? Yeah, but I liked it. He wasn't pushy. Funny, easy to talk to, good at keeping a conversation going. No weird comments, no red flags. So when he asked if I wanted to grab ice cream and take a late-night drive, I didn't even hesitate. He picked me up at 11. His car was nice. Not like I'm rich nice, but clean, well kept. The kind of car that smells like leather and faint cologne, like the guy actually cares about it. We got ice cream, drove around the city, and honestly, it was great. Ryan was charming. Not in an over-the-top way, but just enough. He asked questions, really listened, had a way of making me feel comfortable. I didn't even notice when we started leaving the city, didn't even think to question it, until I realized we were the only car on the road. I glanced at the clock, 12:07 a.m. I stretched, laughing. Wow, we really drove out here, huh? Ryan smiled, didn't answer. The road stretched out ahead, empty and dark. No streetlights, no houses, just trees pressing in on either side. A flicker of unease crawled up my spine. I pulled out my phone just to check the map. No signal. Hey, where are we? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Ryan kept his eyes on the road, just taking a little detour. The unease turned into real nerves. I forced a laugh. Okay, but where to? He didn't answer, just kept driving. A few minutes passed. The tension in the car thickened. I tried to sound light, joking. Ryan, if you're taking me to murder me, at least let me finish my ice cream first. He smiled. Didn't laugh. Didn't say anything. Just kept driving. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a joke anymore. I reached for the door handle just to see if it would open. It didn't. Ryan noticed. He glanced at me, just for a second, then pressed the lock button on his side. A slow, deliberate movement. Don't do that, he said softly. His voice was still calm, smooth, but something in it made my blood run cold. I forced myself to stay calm. Think. Don't panic. Don't make him panic. Okay, I'm actually getting a little freaked out, I said, keeping my tone light. Can we head back? Ryan sighed, like I was being dramatic. You worry too much. Then he reached over, slow, controlled, and placed a hand on my thigh. Just relax, I snapped. I grabbed his wrist and shoved it away, hard. Turn the car around, now. His jaw tightened, just for a second. Then he smiled again. All right. No need to be rude. He didn't turn around, just kept driving. I had seconds to decide. I could scream, try to fight. But we were still in the middle of nowhere, no cars, no people, just trees and dark road. So I did the only thing I could. I waited, breathed through my nose, forced myself to act calm. And when I saw the next stop sign up ahead, I moved. The second the car slowed, I yanked up the lock, threw my weight into the door, and kicked it open. Ryan shouted, reached for me, but I was already moving. I hit the pavement, rolled hard, pain exploding through my knees and palms. Then I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I saw headlights from another car in the distance. I stumbled into the road, waving my arms like a lunatic. The car swerved, braked hard, the driver rolled down their window, eyes wide. Please, call the police, I gasped. He's coming. By the time they got there, Ryan was gone. His Tinder profile? Deleted. The number he texted me from disconnected. Like he never existed. That was 6 months ago. I know I'm in the clear now, but I now have this irrational fear of car rides with other people, and I don't know if that will ever go away. Have you ever let someone into your home and immediately regret it? Not because they did anything outright wrong, not yet anyway, but because something in your gut is telling you, this was a mistake. Yeah. I ignored that feeling, and I almost didn't get him out. It started normal. I matched with Jason on Tinder. Clean cut, friendly, a little shy. Not movie star hot, but attractive in that approachable way. His bio was simple. Big fan of good coffee, bad movies, and great company. looking for something real. We texted for a few days and he seemed nice. A little awkward maybe, but nothing weird. No immediate red flags. So when he asked if I wanted to meet up, I said yes. We got coffee at a little cafe downtown. And honestly, he was better in person. He was soft-spoken, polite, genuinely interested in what I had to say. No weird comments, no arrogance, just normal. We talked about music, movies, childhood stories. He had this quiet, unassuming charm, like he wasn't trying to impress me, just enjoying the conversation. And I liked that. When the date started wrapping up, I wasn't ready for it to end. "Want to come hang out at my place for a bit?" I asked. He smiled. "I'd love to." I had no idea I'd just made the worst decision of my life. At first, everything was fine. We got to my apartment, put on a dumb movie, sat on the couch. Jason wasn't pushy. He wasn't clingy. He just sat close, leaned in a little when we talked. But after a while, I noticed he wasn't saying much anymore. Just watching me, like he was studying me. Around midnight, I stretched and yawned. All right, I should probably get some sleep. Jason just smiled, not like he was ignoring me, like he didn't hear me at all. "Do you want some tea?" he asked instead. I hesitated. Why wasn't he leaving? "I'm actually pretty tired," I said again, a little firmer. His expression didn't change. "You know, this is really nice," he murmured. "Just us. Together. Okay, no more being polite. Jason, I think it's time for you to go." His smile twitched. Not a full change, just this tiny flicker before he covered it up. "Of course," he said smoothly. He gestured at his cup. "Let me finish my tea first?" I didn't like it. Didn't like the way he said it. Didn't like that I suddenly felt like a guest in my own home. But I nodded. And that was my second mistake. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. The tea sat there, untouched. Jason hadn't moved. Hadn't blinked much either. Just sat there, fingers lightly drumming against his knee. Waiting. I grabbed his cup. "Okay, tea's done. Time to go." His hand shot out, fast, too fast, grabbing my wrist, hard. I froze. For the first time all night, Jason's smile was gone, and his voice flat, emotionless. "Why are you rushing me?" My stomach dropped. I yanked my arm back, didn't break eye contact. "Because I want you to leave. Now." For a second, he just stared. Then just as quickly as it disappeared, the smile came back. "Of course," he said. He stood up slowly. Too slowly. Then he did something that made my blood turn to ice. He walked to the wrong door. Not the front door. My bedroom. "Jason." I kept my voice steady. "The front door's this way." He stopped. Turned his head slightly. "I know." My hands clenched into fists. My heart pounded. "Then why are you—" "I was just thinking," he interrupted. Software calm. "It's late. It'd be easier if I just stayed the night." "Nope. Absolutely not." I moved fast, stepping between him and the hallway. "Get out." His face shifted, not angry, not sad, just disappointed, like a parent dealing with a difficult child. "I don't think you mean that," he said, software almost gentle. "I do." I reached for my phone. He lunged. I don't even remember thinking, just reacting. I grabbed the nearest object, a ceramic candle holder, and swung. It smashed into his shoulder. Not hard enough to do real damage, but enough to throw him off. Enough for me to run. I bolted for the front door, yanking it open, and Jason's arm shot out, slamming it shut. His breath was right at my ear. "You're being rude," he whispered. I shoved him, hard, enough to send him stumbling back, enough for me to scream, loud, louder than I ever had in my life. His face snapped, whatever mask he'd been wearing, gone. Eyes cold, lips pressed thin. For a second I thought he was going to do something. Then, without a word, he turned, opened the door, and walked out. Just like that. I locked everything, didn't sleep, Didn't move from my bed until morning. And the second the sun came up, I called the police, filed a report, blocked his number. I deleted the Tinder app, never again. For weeks, I jumped at every sound, checked my locks 3 times before bed. I thought it was over. Then one night I got home late, turned the corner to my apartment, and my stomach dropped. There was something on my doormat, a ceramic candle holder, the same kind I'd hit him with. You ever match with someone who just seems a little too normal? Like they check all the boxes, decent looking, good job, polite, no obvious red flags, but something about them just doesn't stick? That was Ben, and I should have trusted my gut. I wasn't even that interested at first. His profile was fine, generic almost. Ben, 32, works in finance, avid collector, just looking for something real. Nothing weird, nothing exciting, just a guy. But he messaged me first, and he was shockingly normal. No weird pickup lines, no "you up?" texts, no immediate requests for more pics, just polite, well-spoken conversation. He asked me about my job, my favorite movies, what I'd do if I won the lottery. And the guy really listened. By the second day, I started thinking, maybe I should actually give this one a shot. So when he asked me to dinner, I said yes. The restaurant was nice, not too fancy, but he clearly put thought into it. And Ben? He was exactly like his messages. Charming, attentive, almost old-fashioned in a way. The kind of guy who opens doors, insists on paying the check, says things like, a woman should never have to reach for her wallet. At first it was refreshing. Then, it started feeling a little off. It was small things, like how he watched me just a little too closely when I spoke, like he was memorizing every word, every expression, or how he never broke eye contact even when he was eating, or the way he said my name, too often, like he was trying to make it stick. Halfway through the date, he mentioned his collection. "You're gonna think I'm weird," he said, smiling. "Try me. I collect dolls." I laughed, expecting him to joke about it. But he didn't laugh. He just smiled. "Vintage, porcelain, handmade. I've got them all," he said. "Each one is special in its own way." I won't lie, it was a little creepy. But he was normal otherwise, right? I let it slide. I wish I hadn't. By the time we finished dinner, it was still early. Ben offered to drive me home, but then he hesitated. "You know, I don't usually do this, but I'd love to show you my collection." He said it like a joke, but his eyes weren't joking. Every instinct told me to say no, but I was trying to be polite, trying not to be that girl who assumes the worst. "Just for a little bit," I said. "I can't stay long." He smiled, almost like he knew I'd say yes. Ben's house was huge, not new money huge. Old, Victorian, too many rooms, too many hallways. Inside it smelled like wood and something floral, like an antique shop. "Come on, I'll show you," he said, leading me toward a hallway. That's when I felt it, that weird, sinking feeling, like I was walking into something I wasn't supposed to see. The doll room was at the end of the hall, and the second he opened the door, my stomach turned. It was wall-to-wall dolls, not just shelves, glass cases, display stands, rocking chairs, hundreds of them, staring, frozen smiles, glassy eyes reflecting the dim light. Some looked old, dressed in Victorian lace and faded bonnets. Others were hyper-realistic, almost too human. But the worst part? They weren't just sitting there. They were positioned. Some were standing in groups facing each other, like they were mid-conversation. Others were seated around a dining table, plates and silverware in front of them. And in the corner, a tiny bed with 2 dolls tucked under a quilt, like they were sleeping. I felt my pulse in my throat. "Ben, this is a lot," I said, forcing a laugh. He just watched me. "Do you like them?" My skin crawled. I was about to make up an excuse to leave when I noticed something else. Something that didn't fit. On the far side of the room, one doll was different. It wasn't old-fashioned, not porcelain, not plastic. It was life-sized. A woman, sitting perfectly upright in a velvet chair, dressed in an actual gown, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her face was eerily real, too detailed, too human. "That one's my favorite," Ben said softly. And that's when I saw it, the hair. It wasn't synthetic. It was real. My stomach twisted. "Ben, what is that?" He smiled. "She's special." And then he reached for my wrist. I jerked away. I should go. My voice was too high, too nervous. Ben's expression didn't change. "You just got here," he murmured. He stepped between me and the door. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Ben, move." He exhaled, slow. Then he laughed. "God, you're jumpy." He held up his hands like he was teasing. "It's just a doll, sweetheart." But his eyes weren't teasing. I grabbed my bag and shoved past him, half running down the hall. Behind me, I heard him say, too softly, "You would have fit in perfectly." I didn't look back. I blocked his number that night. His Tinder profile, gone, like he never existed. But here's the part that still messes me up. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling online, just killing time. I clicked on some random antique doll forum, and there, in the background of one of the photos, I saw it. The life-size doll in the velvet chair. Except this time, her head was tilted, her hands were in her lap, and she was wearing the same dress I wore that night. I should have known something was off when she insisted on calling the taxi herself. It wasn't even that late. I could have easily walked home, maybe taken an Uber. But Riley was weirdly pushy about it. "It's safer this way," she said, tapping away on her phone. I didn't question it, because up until that moment the night had been perfect. I matched with Riley about a week before. She was cute in a low-key, effortless way. No overdone filters, no weird angles. Just her, natural. Shoulder-length brown hair, big green eyes, this little dimple on one side when she smiled. More importantly, she was funny. Not just ha-ha funny, but actually sharp. Our texts were full of sarcasm, inside jokes that somehow formed in a day. I liked her immediately. So when she asked me to drinks at this little underground cocktail bar, I was all in. And the night, even better than expected. Easy conversation. Real chemistry. No awkwardness, no forced small talk. It just clicked. Which is why I didn't even think to argue when she called the taxi. I should have. The car pulled up within minutes. Old, slightly beat up. No company logo, but a little for hire sign on the dash. The driver didn't say a word when we got in. Just gave Riley a small nod. I figured she must have called some local taxi service. Normal, right? The first 5 minutes felt fine. Riley leaned into me, giggling about some inside joke from earlier. I was riding the high of a successful date, already thinking about when we'd see each other again. Then I noticed the driver wasn't following the GPS. He wasn't even checking it. The little screen on the dash was dark. No navigation, no rideshare app running. I frowned. "Hey man, what route are you taking?" No answer. Riley's fingers tightened slightly around my wrist. I turned to her, expecting her to be confused too, but she wasn't. She was looking straight ahead, completely silent, like she already knew. My stomach dropped. Something wasn't right. I sat up straighter. "Dude, seriously, where are we going?" Still, nothing. I glanced at the door handle. No lock switch. The old manual kind, with the little nub you had to pull up. But when I tried to lift it, it didn't budge, like it was jammed. That's when the first needle of fear stabbed through the back of my skull. I looked out the window. We weren't downtown anymore. The streetlights were more spread out. Buildings replaced by warehouses, then trees. "Riley." My voice was low, urgent. What the hell is this? She still didn't answer, didn't even look at me, just exhaled softly, almost regretful. And that's when I knew. She wasn't stuck in this car with me. I was stuck in this car with her. I pressed my back against the seat, mind racing. Think. I could grab the wheel, force us off the road. But what if he had a weapon? I could break the window. But how fast was he driving? I reached for my phone. Dead. Not just low battery, fully, inexplicably dead. I turned to Riley, desperate now. Where are we going? She finally looked at me, and I swear to God, she looked sad. Just don't fight it, okay? Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. It's easier that way. I felt something cold and sharp slide through my ribs, pure primal panic. I lunged for the door again, clawing at the lock, pulling until my fingertips burned. But it wouldn't budge. The driver finally spoke. One word. Almost. My vision blurred with adrenaline. I wasn't gonna let this happen. I don't know what took over me, but I stopped thinking. I just moved. I slammed my foot into the driver's seat hard as I could, throwing my full weight into it. The guy grunted, the car jerked, and for a split second, the lock popped up. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed it, yanked the handle, and threw myself out. I hit the ground hard, rolled into gravel, knees scraping open. The sound of screeching tires echoed behind me, but I didn't stop. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I saw lights, houses, a gas station. I stumbled inside, panting, bleeding, half crazed. The clerk stared. I must have looked insane. Help, I gasped. Call the police, please. By the time they got there, the car was long gone. No license plate on security cameras. No record of a taxi company matching that car. And Riley? Her Tinder profile was deleted. Her number? Disconnected. Like she never existed. For weeks I tried to make sense of it. Maybe she was being threatened. Maybe she didn't have a choice. But sometimes I think back to that look she gave me. The sadness. And I wonder if she had a choice after all. If she just chose him over me. Because late at night, when my room is quiet, I swear I can still hear a voice. You ever meet someone so perfect that it feels off? Like logically everything about them checks out. They say the right things, do the right things, hit that perfect mix of confident but not cocky, attentive but not clingy. But in the back of your mind, there's this small nagging voice whispering, no one is this perfect. Yeah, I ignored that voice, and I almost didn't make it out. I matched with Ethan on a Thursday. He was a 10, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair, with this effortlessly tousled look, sharp jawline, designer suits in half his pictures, but not in a douchey way, more like, I actually know how to dress myself. His bio was clean and simple, 6 feet 3 inches, an entrepreneur, a little old-fashioned, but I know how to treat a lady. Every girl I knew had horror stories about dating apps, creeps, weirdos, guys who couldn't hold a conversation. But Ethan, he was different. He didn't just hit me with a hey. He read my bio and started with an inside joke based on it. He was charming, funny, articulate. Every response was thoughtful, smooth, perfect. By the second day, we had an inside language. He texted good morning every day. He sent me little reminders like, drink some water, don't forget to eat. I wasn't just interested, I was hooked. We met up for dinner that Saturday, and of course, it wasn't just dinner, it was an experience. Ethan picked me up in a sleek black car. He got out, opened the door for me, greeted me with a warm smile and a deep, steady voice. The kind of voice that makes you feel safe. The restaurant was perfect. Candlelit, not too loud, not too stuffy. He pulled out my chair, ordered for me, but only after asking what I liked. He was funny, engaging, and made me feel like the only person in the room. But there was one moment that I brushed off. When I reached for my phone just to check a notification, he lightly placed his hand over mine. No force, just gentle pressure, and he smiled. No distractions tonight. I laughed, feeling flattered. He just wants my full attention. That's sweet, right? I put my phone away. The next few weeks were intoxicating. Ethan was consistent, always checking in, always making me feel special. He planned every date, made every decision, never hesitated. And I liked it. I'd never met a guy who seemed so sure about me. Then, little things started to shift. The first red flag was small. One night, I mentioned how I missed hanging out with my best friend, Jenna. Ethan smiled. I get that, but don't you think she's kind of a bad influence? I blinked. What? Number? She's great. He tilted his head slightly, thoughtful. I don't know. You told me she flakes a lot, cancels plans last minute. That's not really how a real friend treats you. I laughed it off. He's just being protective. That's sweet. But that night I found myself texting Jenna less. The second red flag came later. Ethan had never raised his voice. Not once. Even when I teased him, even when I was sarcastic, he always stayed calm. But one night I made a joke. Something stupid. Something about how he was a little too good at being a boyfriend. His face didn't change, but his hand tightened around his fork. Not enough to be obvious, just a flicker of tension. Then, just as fast, he relaxed, smiled. I just don't think it's funny to question how much I care about you. His voice was still calm, steady, but my stomach twisted. I apologized even though I wasn't sure why. After that, I started noticing things. Little things, like how he always knew where I was, even when I hadn't told him. One night I went to the store after work. I hadn't mentioned it. But 5 minutes after walking in, I got a text. What are you getting? I froze, looked around. No sign of him. I laughed it off. Maybe I mentioned it earlier, and I just forgot. But my stomach felt tight the whole way home. The moment everything snapped into place was at his apartment. We were drinking wine, sitting on his couch, laughing. He was perfect, as always. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Jenna. I hadn't talked to her in days, maybe weeks. Before I could open the message, Ethan grabbed the phone from my hands. Fast. Too fast. He looked at the screen. Smiled. I really don't think she's good for you. Then he did something that still makes my blood run cold. He set my phone down, out of reach, and tilted his head, studying me. I think you like me too much to let some random person ruin this. His tone was soft, sweet, but his eyes? Dead. My heart pounded. Ethan, give me my phone. He smiled wider. Of course. Just tell me you trust me first. I grabbed my phone and left. Blocked his number that night. I didn't tell him where I lived, but I still saw a black car parked outside my place for the next 3 nights. Every time I left the house, I felt watched. Then the text started. New number. No name. You're overreacting. I never even did anything wrong. You'll be back. I ignored them. Then, one night, he stopped texting. And that's when I got really scared. Because Ethan wasn't the kind of guy to just give up. It's been 6 months. No more messages. No more cars outside my house. But sometimes, when I leave work late, I get this feeling. Like someone is walking behind me. Like someone is right there, just out of view. I still don't know if I imagined her. I've replayed that night in my head 100 times trying to make sense of it. But the more I think about it, the less real it feels. Or maybe that's just what I want to believe. It started like any other Tinder date. I matched with a woman named Laura. She had this classic beauty. Dark hair, piercing green eyes, a kind of old school, almost vintage charm. There was something off about her pictures, though. They felt too perfect, like they belonged in an old photo album instead of a dating app. No selfies, no candids, just posed shots with soft lighting, like they'd been taken decades ago. But she messaged first, and she was charming, so I ignored the weird feeling in my gut and agreed to meet her for drinks. We chose a quiet bar downtown, the kind of place where the music isn't too loud and you can actually have a conversation. I got there first, sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and waited. She walked in exactly on time. No texting, "I'm here," or looking around confused. She just walked straight to me like she knew exactly where I'd be. And I swear, when she smiled, it felt wrong. Not in an obvious way, not like some horror movie villain, but just off. Too perfect. Too practiced. We talked for over an hour, but now, looking back, I can't remember a single personal detail about her. She asked about my job, my childhood, my family. But every time I tried to turn the conversation to her, she'd deflect. Vague answers, nothing specific. Then I realized something unsettling. She hadn't touched her drink. Not once. "You don't like whiskey?" I joked, nodding toward her untouched glass. She smiled, again too perfect. "Oh, I just like the smell." That weird feeling in my gut grew. I glanced at her purse, her coat. No phone, no keys, no wallet, nothing. It was like she hadn't brought anything with her. I made an excuse to go to the bathroom, needing a moment to clear my head. When I came back, she was gone. At first, I figured she'd just stepped outside or maybe left in a hurry. But when I asked the bartender, he frowned. "You were here alone, man. Who were you looking for?" I felt a chill creep up my spine. I pulled out my phone, opened Tinder, and searched for her profile. It was gone, not unmatched, just gone, like it had never existed. I went home, trying to shake the uneasy feeling. Maybe she was messing with me. Maybe it was some elaborate prank. But then I saw the napkin sitting on my kitchen counter, the one with an address scrawled in neat handwriting. I didn't remember her writing it down. And when I searched the address the next morning, it didn't exist. There was no street, no house, just an empty lot. I never saw Laura again. But sometimes, late at night, when I pass by that bar, I get this terrible feeling. Like someone is watching me. And I swear, just for a second, I see a woman with dark hair and green eyes smiling at me from the corner of my vision. Too perfect, too practiced. And then she's gone. I went on this date with someone a while back and realized way too late that I didn't actually know anything about them. Like on paper, they seemed fine. But in person, there's just something off. That was David. And I should have left the moment he opened his mouth. Or more accurately, didn't. I matched with David on a Sunday night. His profile was weirdly sparse. One photo, grainy, black and white. No bio. Normally, I'd swipe left on that kind of thing. But his face was intriguing. Strong jawline, deep-set eyes, almost too symmetrical. And when he messaged me, he was polite. Not overly flirty, not weird. Just normal. David. "Hey." Me. "Hey, not much on your profile." "Mystery man?" David. "Just don't like social media." Fair enough. The conversation was basic. Small talk, a few jokes. But he responded quickly, consistently. And when he asked if I wanted to meet up for coffee the next day, I said yes. Biggest mistake of my life. I got to the cafe first, sat by the window, sipping my drink, scrolling my phone. Then I felt it. That weird prickling sensation, like I was being watched. I looked up. David was standing outside the cafe, not coming in, not waving, just standing there, facing me. I gave a small, awkward smile. Nothing, just staring. Then, after a few seconds, he turned and walked inside. I brushed off the weirdness. First dates are awkward. Maybe he was just nervous. Then he sat down, and that's when I realized he hadn't said a word. "Hey," I said, offering a smile. David nodded. Not a normal nod. Just one slow, mechanical movement. Nice to finally meet you." Another nod. "Do you want to grab a coffee?" He blinked once. Then, finally, already had one. His voice was flat, empty, like he was repeating a line he'd rehearsed. The silence stretched. I tried everything to keep the conversation going. Asked him about his job, his hobbies, his family. His answers were short, deliberate. Work in tech. No siblings. Not much into hobbies. No elaboration. No follow-up questions. Just answers. And the entire time he didn't break eye contact. Not once. Something about it felt wrong. Not like he was bored. Not even like he was shy. Like he was waiting. For what, I didn't know. But I suddenly felt very, very aware of how alone we were in this corner of the cafe. I forced a laugh. So, you're not much of a talker, huh? For the first time, something flickered in his expression. A tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. More like a glitch. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. You talk a lot when you're nervous. My breath caught. What? He tilted his head slightly. You always do that. Always. My skin crawled. I forced a smile. I mean, we just met, so... No. The word was sharp. I mean before. I froze. David leaned forward slightly. At the park. Last Thursday. You were on the phone. Pacing. My blood turned ice cold. I had been at the park last Thursday. I had been on the phone, but I had never told him that. I swallowed, heart pounding. You must be mistaking me for someone else. David didn't blink. No. My hands went clammy. David, how did you know that? He finally smiled. I watch you. I stood up, didn't make an excuse, didn't try to be polite, just grabbed my bag and moved. David grabbed my wrist, cold fingers, unnaturally strong. You're leaving? I yanked away. Stay. He didn't say it like a request. He said it like a fact, like a command. I turned and ran. I barely remember getting home. Heart racing, head spinning. I locked my doors, closed my blinds, blocked his number, tried to calm down, tried to convince myself I was overreacting, until I checked my phone and saw a message from an unknown number. You left in a hurry. Didn't even finish your drink. That's okay. I'll see you soon. I dropped my phone, because attached to the message was a photo. Me sitting in my apartment, taken from outside my window. You ever meet someone who's too perfect? Like on paper, they check every box, funny, attractive, charming, but something about them just feels scripted? That was Alex, and I should have trusted my gut. We matched on a Tuesday. His profile was impressive, but not flashy. Great smile, good job, a couple of pictures that made him look like the kind of guy who probably hosted game nights and owned a really well-trained dog. His bio was short and confident. Sarcastic, well-dressed, and a great cook, looking for someone who can keep up. I liked it. More importantly, he was easy to talk to. No awkward small talk. No weird, so what are you wearing? Texts at 2 a.m. Just good conversation. So when he asked me to dinner that Friday, I said yes. The date was perfect. Like movie scene perfect. Alex picked a beautiful little restaurant. Cozy, candlelit, intimate without feeling over the top. And he was exactly what I thought he'd be. Charming, funny, effortlessly confident. I should have been excited. But something about him felt rehearsed. Like he'd had this conversation before. Like he already knew exactly what I was going to say next. Halfway through dinner, I noticed it. A faint tan line on his left ring finger. Like he'd worn a ring there for a long time. I forced myself not to overthink it. So, have you ever been married? I asked casually. Alex smiled. Nope, never. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause, didn't even look at his hand. And that should have been my first clue. Because the best liars don't stammer or panic. The best liars say it calmly, because they've already decided you'll believe them. After dinner, he walked me to my car, kissed me goodnight, texted me the next morning, and for the next few weeks, everything was perfect. Dates, late-night phone calls, little good morning texts that made me actually look forward to waking up. I started to ignore that nagging feeling in my stomach until the messages started. The first one came late at night. Unknown number. Be careful with him. I frowned. Who is this? No response, just 3 dots, typing, then unknown number. Did he tell you about me? I felt my blood turn cold. I glanced at Alex, sleeping beside me, his phone on the nightstand. I typed back, I think you have the wrong number. Immediately, unknown number. Number. I don't. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The next morning, Alex made us coffee like nothing was wrong. And for the first time, I noticed something. He was too comfortable, like a man who'd done this before. That afternoon, I called the number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. No name, just breathing. Then, a whisper. Don't let him take you anywhere private. The line went dead. I confronted Alex that night. I didn't tell him about the texts, just asked him straight up, "Are you seeing anyone else?" He laughed, like it was ridiculous. Of course not. Why? And then, as if to prove his point, he pulled out his phone. Right in front of me, scrolled through his messages, showed me everything, nothing suspicious, no mystery numbers, no deleted messages. I felt stupid, paranoid, crazy, and that's exactly what he wanted. I was ready to let it go, until 2 nights later when I got another message, a photo, of me and Alex at dinner, taken through the restaurant window, and attached. Just 3 words. Look at his basement. I didn't respond. I didn't sleep. The next time I saw Alex, I forced myself to act normal, to pretend everything was fine, to wait. And that's when I saw it. His keys, sitting on the counter. I told him I had a headache, that I was going to lie down. Then, while he was in the shower, I took his spare key and drove to his house. The basement door was locked, deadbolt, secure. But next to it, a keypad. I stared at it. Then, without thinking, I typed in the date we met. The lock clicked, and inside, I found her. Not her body, not her remains. Something worse. A mannequin, dressed in an old, faded wedding dress, sitting perfectly upright in the corner, and in its stiff plastic hand, a real wedding ring with a name engraved inside. Hannah. My stomach turned. I grabbed my phone, snapped a picture, but before I could run, I heard the door slam shut. Then his voice. You weren't supposed to see that. I don't remember what happened next. I just know I ran. I know he chased me. I know I screamed so loud the neighbors called the police. And when they searched his house, they found more. More mannequins, more dresses, more rings, each one with a different woman's name. But they never found Hannah. Alex was arrested, charged with stalking, false imprisonment. But no one could prove he'd actually done anything. He never confessed, never told them where she was. And 3 months later, he made bail. I moved, changed my number, and tried to forget.